First video in a long time. Welcome to Weekly Flow Bucks Chalk Talk. It is March 23rd, Thursday, 2023. It is my stepdad's birthday today. Happy birthday to Bob. Anyways, we got some things to cover. Talk about on-the-court performances, talk about the Bucks record, and some seeding stuff. We got 10 games left of the regular season. There's some scheduling things that we got to cover. Some very interesting scheduling things that we have to cover that I'm not salty about, but we'll get to that. Talk about the MVP race, the dreaded MVP race, some stuff on social media, and my predictions for the rest of the regular season and a little bit beyond that. So let's get into it. So Bucks played the Spurs last night, 52-20 now, and the Spurs are 19-54. You really gotta pray and hold out that they get that number one pick, because that's rough. 19 wins. I mean, I know that they can get to 20 wins, but like teen win seasons are not it. Bucks are coming off a few days rest after a couple nights off after beating the Raptors at home. That was a pretty solid game. Spurs are coming off a road loss back to back, actually, against the Pelicans. They sat a bunch of people tonight, but it felt like they had a bunch of people playing tonight. I shouldn't say tonight. Last night. I say tonight because I work third shift. I work overnight. So when I got up, basically the game was in the morning for me. Some leaders for the Bucks real quick. Giannis had 31 and 24, 31 points in 24 minutes. He had 14 rebounds. Chris had 10 assists. He is dealing the ball. He's playing really well, being a facilitator, getting oops to Chris, just getting good looks on the inside, playing inside out. He's been passing the ball really well. Brook had 2 blocks, what you basically expect. That's chalk for him. And then Grayson, 4 steals. He had 1 steal that I'll talk about later. That was pretty exciting, but let's get into some on-court stuff. So Giannis looked great early. Bucks as a whole started off well. They slowed down a little bit at the end of that first quarter, kind of into the second quarter. I remember I was getting some food, getting ready to go to work, trying to just wake up, have breakfast, dinner, whatever. And I was like, man, this game was like, I started it and I was like, yeah, they're up like 8-9 points. That's solid. That's what I expect, kind of deal. But then I'd look away for a little bit and it's a 5-point game. Then I'd look back and it's a 11-point game, and then it's 8, and then it's 6. And then I came back at one point. It was a 2-point game. It's like, wow, well, we're going to be in for another kind of Pacers kind of night, but eventually it didn't end up that way. They ended the first half on a 15-2 run. That was really awesome. It felt sloppy, mostly because I think there was a lot of loose balls kind of going around, and the Bucks just capitalized. They were playing in transition really well. They were zipping the ball over the place, and then they ended on a buzzer 3 from Ingles. They put their foot to the floor in the second half, and basically that was it from there. It just blew open. You can look at the game chart of the win probability, and it just absolutely it just completely favors the Bucks. Giannis only played 24 minutes. He didn't play in the fourth quarter. He did all of his damage very early on, played really well, played aggressive, shot the ball with a lot of confidence. I know that there was a point that, that Lockdown Bucks had mentioned that Zach Collins kind of gave Giannis a little shove after a layup or maybe a dunk or something like that, and Giannis was not having it and immediately went down and threw a ferocious dunk down. And he just was like, yeah, I'm going to be him tonight. And he was. Middleton started again, which is great. I think it's his 9th, maybe his 10th start. I think it's his 9th start in a row. He looked great from mid-range. I think he was, they pointed out he was 7 for 9, I want to say. And man, he was just getting anywhere he wanted. He was doing in between hezzies. He was doing nailing people's feet to the ground, getting past them. He was doing turnarounds, and he was doing hezzy pull-ups. He was just getting everything that he wanted. However, he struggled from 3, pretty par for the course for him lately. He's not doing great from 3, even though he's making some, and he's still shooting, which is good. They're not going down at the clip that he wants. He only went 1 for 6 tonight, but he shot with a lot of confidence, and it's kind of the Spurs kind of situation where they're not like the Pacers where they have an identity where they can play a certain way, and you might suffer from shooting too much and having too high of a pace, but the Bucks shot really well, at least confidence-wise, and they played their own style. Bobby had a solid night. He had another double-double. He was at 19 and 10, which is really good off the bench. Obviously, 6th Man of the Year candidate. I think he's right there with Quickly. I think he has a bit of the edge, but he missed a lot of time, so that kind of hurts him. Lopez had a quiet night, but Pat made up for it. He had a double-digit rebounding night. He had 10 boards, which is, you forget that he's a really good rebounding guard, and sometimes he fits that 2-3 kind of role, but he can grab some boards if he really needs to, and that was big from him. Joe had 14 points, 4 for 6 from 3, which is awesome. Had that buzzer beater I mentioned earlier. He had a layup. He had 5 points to end the second half, or end the first half rather, in the second quarter, where he had like 5 points in 45 seconds. He had a layup after some transition stuff, and then he had that kick out 3 from Giannis. Everyone else got to their spots and showed their experience running a consistent offense tonight. You look at some of the stuff that Javon does and stuff that Drew does, and they're kind of quiet, but they took their shots when they needed to, and it was really great. They did a solid job, I would say. Team is averaging jumped ahead in my script. However, I will say the struggle from the free throw line tonight was real. They were only 13 for 24, just over 50%. Team is nearly 75% on around 22, 23 attempts a game, but only hitting 55% tonight is not great, and it prevented it from being a major 40-point plus blowout. Bobby missed 6 free throws, and he missed out on a 20-point double-double. And, stuff like that is part of the reason voters, when they pick some of these, like, kind of not as highlighted awards, like 6th Man of the Year, 20-point double-double off the bench, even if it's against the Spurs, is a pretty big deal. Excuse me. And that was really a chance for him to, even if he made, he was 2 for 8. If he makes half his free throws, 21-point double-double. If he makes 4 more, that's 23-point double-double. That's really big. But Bucks win big and keep their small but growing lead over the Celtics and the Sixers, 2.5 and 3 games respectively. It's growing because the amount of games is getting less, and they got some matchups here. They got 10 games left. Can they go 10-0? I don't know. I doubt it, but I believe this team can do anything if they lock down and put themselves into playoff mode. So any game, any arena, doesn't matter. I think they have what it takes. Last season, I made a final 10-game predictions kind of deal. I think I had them going 6-4, and they kind of showed me on that one, and I think they went 8-2, maybe 7-3. I'll keep it short this year, and I'll save that for the end. But hint, I have them pretty close. The Bucks transcend their win margin last year and are looking even better by the night. Since Middleton's return, and especially in the starting lineup, if the Bucks are serious about this 1 seed, like Grayson mentioned in a mini interview recently, the team is aware. They understand. They aren't eyeballing it every day. They're not watching after every single game, but keep their eye on it just to make sure. With 10 games left, I'm sure that frequency is gonna pick up on how much they're peaking at it. Was some tough games and road trips coming in the final 10-game stretch. In 10 games, the Bucks have 3 back-to-backs, which is absurd. Denver and Boston are 2 of the second half, and they have 5 games, 5 cities in 7 days, with only the 26th and the 28th off for the rest of this month. Then they have 2 days off at home, and then they have home, and then they travel day away, and then they have a home back-to-back. So then they have a day off at home, and they have the last game at Toronto. So over that next kind of like 16 days, they have these 10 games and tons of traveling, 3 back-to-backs, which is absurd. Hopefully they'll have the 1 seed squared away before those Memphis and Toronto matchups, the 2 big games in those 2 games. But they have big matchups with the Nuggets. They got the Celtics, they got the Sixers. I think the NBA has to fix this. Even if it's minimal, reduce the season by 4 games. That's all I'm saying. Cut 1 conference road trip out of conference road trip out. Instead of going out west for an extra week, just cut those 4 games out. Keep in conference and division games easy. It may hurt to not get opposite conference stars to go, see Giannis go play in Sacramento. It's a fun game, but if the NBA wants a better product, if they want players to not sit out, like perfect example, Jokic sat out against the Bucks. Coach Mike Malone said the past 4 MVP winners were on these 2 teams, and we don't get to see that matchup because they're pushing for a different matchup later in the week. It's just, some things that you have to be willing to give up, and it just happens. But at the end of the day, We got to live with it. So quickly, I want to touch on the MVP race. Yes, I occasionally taken part in some not so intelligent discourse, but for the most part, it's for goose and gas. But realistically, I believe this is the best MVP race ever. However, like Tim Legler and JJ Redick recently said, it's been way too long. MVP discourse has been going on for far too long, to the point where people are simply over it. The first odds were released, I believe, almost directly after the finals last season, and like 2 more polls came out before then, and then 2 in-season polls, and now everyone's just like, I don't even want to hear the phrase MVP because it's just going to get toxic. I'm over it. They just want the award to be given out. I personally believe Giannis is going to win it, but I think, or that Giannis is the MVP, but I think Joel will finally win it. He's playing harder than ever, and he's going to will himself to get that award. Unless Giannis averages like 38, 15, and 7 over the next 10 games on like 68% true shooting, play stellar defense, beating the Nuggets, Celtics, Sixers, Grizzlies, Raptors, I don't foresee it happening, at least not realistically. Which brings me to a funny point about social media, the Bucks fans or Bucks adjacent information that's out there. We're getting riled up too much. I think myself included, whether it be positively fighting for Giannis in a fair manner, gassing him up, or talking about Pat and how he's not great from 3 this year, how Grayson shouldn't get minutes in the playoffs. Regardless, I think that, speaking of Grayson, he had that steal, he took off from like the dotted line, yammed it down. It was kind of nice. I just think that we got to relax, give ourselves some time to rest before the playoffs get ridiculous and get kind of tough to watch, and we're stressing out all night. So my final predictions for the regular season. We passed last season's wins. We have a chance to get 60 wins. I believe they do it. I think they go 8-2. I think they go 3-1 on this upcoming road trip. They lose Friday versus the Jazz, then they win the next 3. They win in Denver. Come home, they beat Boston, they beat Philly. I think they lose at Washington, kind of one of those rest nights against a not so great team. Then they end on a 3-game win streak. I think Giannis jumps up and will get the runner-up for MVP. I think Brooke wins DPOY. I don't think Bobby wins 6th Man of the Year. He missed too much time, but that's kind of where I'm at. Kind of ran through that last bit a little quick there, but I think the Bucks are in a position where they're in the driver's seat. I think it depends on them to win at home against Boston and Philly. I think it depends on them to decide whether or not they're going to play well, if they're going to rest guys Friday night against Utah, or if they're going to rest guys at Washington. I think that they have a chance to get 60 wins. I think they can. I think Giannis has a chance to potentially jump up in that MVP if he wins those head-to-heads against Jokic, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Joel and Harden. I think if he wins those games, he makes a really good case. Last year, he had some really amazing games down the stretch. I think he can replicate it. He's always going to go out and go into win mode against those really tough matchups. I think Brooke is kind of the favorite to win the Defensive Player of the Year right now, and I think he's kind of the more attractive pick, more because of his season and stuff that he's been able to do. So I think this Bucks team has something special brewing. And well, let me know what you think of my picks, my thoughts, your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you, and have a great day. And I'll see you again next time. Peace.